Welcome to Soul Talks with Kenlin, and this is the transmission for the creative rebel, the original thinker, Gene Key 8. Now, Gene Key 8 is for all of us, but if you have this in your hologenetic profile, definitely take a listen. This is a transmission for our time, because we're in a time where what you have to offer, your sacred medicine, is what's needed most. It's seen as the pathway to our evolution. So Gene Key 8 goes from the shadow of mediocrity. I lost that word for a moment. Mediocrity, and its programming partner is compromise. So you can already feel that energy of compromise makes you mediocre. So the mediocrity that we're pointing to is this fear of standing out. Fear of distinguishing yourself from the herd in an authentic way because of being ostracized. And that's a very old DNA baked into our primal system belief or fear, a splenic fear, a deep splenic fear. But we're not called to that fear. We're called to transmute that fear into gold. So Gene Key 8 and mediocrity are responsible for homogenization. It's sort of what the US's specialty is homogenization. Like we take yoga from the East where it's very sacred and we blast it out. And in one way that's beautiful because we live in duality. So we have one way that's beautiful because now more people are doing yoga and experiencing the benefits. And in another way, it just homogenized the shit out of an ancient practice that's very sacred, and it lost so much of the juice. So homogenization is part of Gene Key 8, and it's shadow. It's mediocre. It's following the herd. It's also responsible for institutionalization. And that's why government is not innovative. Government can never be innovative because it's too big, it's too institutional, it's got too many layers and rules and structure to it. So Uranus has been around on the scene in Taurus to break down old structures after Pluto in 2024 just ripped it apart, ripped the seam so that we can start taking a look at what no longer serves us. So this Gene Key has the potential to go into the energy of pure exquisiteness. And that exquisiteness is a unifying force. And it's a feminine force. It's with Gene Key 2, water. It's in the ring of water, so it's deeply feminine. I love this because in human design, gate 8 is paired with gate 1. Gate 1 is the spark, is the fire. And it's paired with gate 8. And that is the creative Shakti. That is the originality, your originality. So it's in the channel of originality, also called the channel of the bards. And I love that because remember, bards were those singers that would come into the castle and perform for the king. And bards never got their heads cut off, even though they sometimes sang songs roasting the king or sang things that no one wanted to confront for fear that act of speaking truth would get their heads cut off. But bards were able to do that. They weren't always political. They sang about love and romance, particularly during troubadour times. The creative license that you get when you step into this frequency, this archetype, is you have the voice. You have the ability to say things and not be killed. You might be crucified on social media. I mean, that happens. And that's why to be a creative rebel is, as Richard Rudd says, a thankless job. You only thank your soul because that's why you do what you do. You don't do it for everyone else. You're not an influencer for everyone else. That's not a creative rebel. The creative rebel in Gene Key 8 doesn't care about being followed. It cares about following the inner truth. So there's so many things to unpack here, because there's a shadow that exists within social media. And we're moving into Gemini, so we're moving into more activity on social media. And generally, we're moving into more air and more fire. So we're going to be more mental. We're going to be more communicative. And this gene key will support you in moving through, because there's a competition, a way that we feel envious. And envy is not jealousy. Envy is when we wish that we had the circumstances of someone else. We wish we had what they have. Sometimes envy also has a negativity, like, and we want that person harmed. But generally, when we're in this community, we just have this sense of, oh, they're doing it so well and I'm not. So we turn it on ourselves, and the I'm not good enough. Well, all of that has been cleaned up through solar eclipse and the movement we made through Taurus, even a year and a half ago, North Node in Taurus. All of that's being cleaned up. So now we're on this precipice, and particularly this week, as the transmission is coming through, this is the last day for Gene Key 8. So get the teaching to work your creative edge through listening to the voice within. Now, it's going to be sloppy. It's going to be messy, because we don't typically arrive on the scene and whatever we put out is beautiful and amazing. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's crap, and we have to keep going, keep refining, keep experimenting. How did that land? How did that land? And not take that feedback as against us. There's nothing wrong with you. But standing in your creative rebel is standing in an inner truth. Because what wants to come through doesn't want to come through the old. So let's talk about the algorithms on social media. The algorithms support a particular kind of expression. So people who have lots of likes and go viral have a particular expression. You can learn about it. It's not unknowable. It's completely like, if you wonder, why are my posts not doing very well? Because the algorithm is very specific about what kinds of content does well. Now, we can say, oh, those people are controlling us. But actually, it's not that way. It's the other way around. The algorithm noticed that people like a particular way of expressing. So here's where the creative rebel gets to be a part of it. Certainly, you can take on the thing that's trending, the way that people like to experience content, or you can blow shit out of the water and be so innovative, so connecting, so authentic in your connection that you actually create a new normal. Wouldn't that be interesting? What would that look like? Now, that's not to say that we throw skill and experience out the window, because we don't. There are reasons why things are at the expert level. There's reasons why people make millions of dollars, and it's not all manipulation. It's also that they are speaking quickly to something. Gemini, quick, quick, quick. So there's a lot to learn. And when we're a creative rebel, it's a pathway of deconditioning to learn what's ours to learn. Now, this is important to say, because I think there's this view, this belief, and right now we're shattering beliefs, that I need to have that ready now. You know, there's a filmmaker, I don't remember which one, but he's a famous filmmaker. He made lots of movies, and he says he watches all of them, and he laughs at his mistakes. He takes note, he takes that in. So there's something about the process, and even reading Gene Key 8 and going into the style, the gift frequency of style. You're finding your own style, speaking what's true for you. There's nothing in there that says, oh, you know, there's going to be a process and it's going to be really, really uncomfortable. but I'm just going to be here to say it is. And everyone has their own karma, dharma with the process. But I'm going to speak for myself and tell you that it's taken me years to find my voice, and I'm still finding my voice. But the way I find it is to show up. And does everybody love my content? No. But that's not who I'm doing it for. I'm not even doing it for the people who do love my content. I'm doing it as a matter of my own self-expression. Because to me, the name of the game of why we've incarnated is to learn that, is to be that. It's like, how much can you bring the light through in your template? Like, that's the question of existence. I love that. So imagine, and I've used this analogy before, like a stained glass window. You can stain glass it any way. There's just millions of renditions of stained glass, right? Would you agree? So imagine light shining through the stained glass, and the shadow, it appears on the ground in these colors, and they're all different. So the light is the light of consciousness. It's that gene key 1. It's that spark, that fire, that it's source, but it comes through particularity, and that particularity is the window. It's you and me. It's our template. And that's why distinctions like the gene keys and astrology and human design are so helpful, because we're so conditioned. The things that we experience between 0 and 7 years old, straight conditioning, goes right in. There's no conscious mind filter. And that's where we get that the world is this way. There are deep assumptions you're operating under right now that are not true. But you make them true because you operate under an assumption that they are true. And then they become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So these distinctions, these prisms, points of view, perspectives, systems like the gene keys and astrology, they have you see something that you couldn't see or name yourself. And you're here to check in with that, because these readings are generalized. They're not particular to you, only you. This is why I like the gene keys so much, because they're not about telling you what you are. They're about asking you. Because someone who has my same gene key as my life work and the sun shining, my conscious sun, will not express the way that I do. In fact, I have a good friend who has that same gene key, expresses totally different. Because we each have a canvas, and we have the color of paint, and we're here to make that picture. And that's our contribution in form. So I say that because I want to demystify the idea that we're supposed to bring through the same thing, and it's supposed to have the same impact. And if we're good at it, we'll have this result. No way. That's not at all true. Like Richard Rudd says, this is a thankless job to be a creative rebel. So it's more of a devotion. It's more a devotion to the movement coming through you, and giving yourself the love, the space, the freedom as your birthright of being human to express yourself. And is it going to be messy? Yes. Is it going to be not that great? Yes. Will you have to achieve mastery? Yes. And that's why staying in your lane is so important. There's no way to achieve mastery if you pop all over the place. Do you get what I'm saying? And so many people who are healers and in the transformation space, leaders, don't know who they are and don't know what they stand for in a pithy, directed, focused way. And there's no flow without focus. So if you're getting tripped up in your originality, then you need to focus. And that's the part of the work I do in the Creators Academy. And I did this in my business work. I'm committed to that because I know for myself how deeply distracting it can be to chase bright, shiny objects. So Gene Key 8 saves us from the mediocrity, from the homogenization of the world by bringing through originality. It says, don't imitate. Now, little kids imitate. That's how we learn. So I want to put a nuance on that. Imitation is how we learn. I notice that sometimes when women come into my container, especially around business, they do the things that I do. And I teach that. I try to model certain things, and they might make a post. If I make a post on something, they might make the same post. And I've done that before with teachers that I've learned from. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are copying the person, then you're shortchanging yourself. And what we've noticed is that your stuff doesn't land. It can land for the original speaker, but it doesn't land for the imitation. But using other teachers as inspiration is okay for a while. That's how we get our baby legs to start walking. But the more we're in the game, we start to break away. I use astrology from other teachers. I use the gene keys because that's part of my genius, is to weave distinctions. And, that's a razor's edge. I got to work that razor's edge because I'm not transmitting their message. I'm weaving and transmitting my own message. And I'm like piggybacking on the knowledge. Like Wayne Dyer made his whole career like that. But I think it's not, we don't argue that Wayne Dyer didn't have something to say and an impact. But the way Wayne Dyer did it was through weaving. He studied a lot. He took in a lot. And then he presented from a new space. So if you're just saying stuff that everybody else is saying, notice the tone. Notice if the energy drops to the ground. Notice whatever you're saying, because I work with creators all the time, and we're going to do the goddess convergence together. And so one of my pointers is notice where the energy goes when you speak. I can tell it in myself. And if I find that my energy is going down, I usually stop the video and re-record, because I got off in an area that I became conceptual. And I didn't speak from some inner knowing, like a thread of inner knowing. So I hope this is helpful, because Gene Key 8 is consumed with originality. Originality is going to save the planet to the extent that we need to be saved. Originality is the goddess moving through us with a template, heaven on earth, the light shining through the template. So it's a learning process. It's a pathway. It's where we're shedding so much of the conditioning of who we used to be, how we thought. And this full moon's going to really support you in that. This week is going to support you in that. It's a powerful message for Gene Key 8. And where are we going? Where does Gene Key 8 say we're going? We're going to exquisiteness, which is a unifying, integrative concept of fractals, like the diamond. It's fractals of the whole. And that's what we are. We're fractals of the whole. So in that way, we can eliminate competition. If I'm secretly envious or competitive, then I know I don't get it. And I've had these conversations with myself, because I sit in the Enneagram triad, that this is a huge issue. And I know this is a huge issue for humanity and social media, but this is a huge issue. And using other people to say whether you're good enough or whether your message is landing. So there's a fine line of using what's out there to see how it's making the mark, to really feel into the authenticity of that person, to celebrate the authenticity of the person, and to use it as that is the level of authenticity I want flowing through me. And realizing that some people have been using their voice and saying these things for 15 years, 20 years. And so we begin anew. And we start to open our voice and speak. And then we actually get narrower. We actually get focused. We start to move in that direction of, oh yeah, this is what my template is here to say in this time and space, in this moment. Then you'll have another death and rebirth and emerge in some other way, in my experience, right? Like lots of shedding. But that's the pathway of the creative process of finding your voice, of experimenting, becoming original, allowing the original to move through you in your template, to say it your way, to be fully self-expressed. And that comes at a cost. I don't want to leave this transmission without presencing the cost, because it's hard. You know, we're pack animals. It's hard to be the one going, you know, what everybody else is like, what is she doing? But when you're convicted in your heart and you believe in yourself, it's not personal. You know, I just watched the first season of Ted Lasso. I know I'm total late to the party. That's just me with entertainment and popular culture. And I was so struck by Ted Lasso, the character who's the coach, and just his drishti. You know, he knows who he is and he accepts who he is not. He did not know anything about soccer, or they call it football in the UK, knew nothing about it. People asked him in a press conference and he said, I don't know anything about it. You know, it was beautiful. It was such a transmission to me of self-love, of self-acceptance, that there's no place to hide. There's no shame there. And so it was just an invitation for me to look at the places where I hold shame because I don't know, because I'm not like that. I'm just this. Appearing now as this, as Byron Katie would say. This is God consciousness appearing now as this. And so stand here and be the full expression of this. And let the shame, let the not self, let the conditioning burn away. This is your full moon assignment, full moon in Sag, happening on the 23rd of May. I'm going to give that transmission next, so pop in to the other video. Thank you so much for tuning in.